What do you think of India being right now very fragmented? You know, there is this north-south divide, there is this regional separatist people, there are all kinds of, there is a rich-poor divide, there's all sorts of divides in India. And the importance of integrating, like, you know, you need an integrated self, you need a holistic, unified being. There also needs to be some kind of integration as a collective entity. So, what are your thoughts on integration of India?
I see a few things. One is that the dharmic tradition that we have encourages, Atmartham tu prithvim tyajet is a wonderful expression of how, what India's culture is. That while you sacrifice a member for a family and a family for a village and a village for a state, but you sacrifice the whole world for your own salvation or your own liberation. So, given that, somehow, the typical Indian, when it comes to aggregates, whether it be country and so on, is less excited. Secondly, since independence came to India and it was an extraordinary person like Sardar Patel, you bound us all together, and then there were certain presupposition in the way constitution was to be implemented, and then political interests intervened and so on. So I think some of those corrections have been happening since economic reforms started, because political independence without economic independence doesn't mean much, and that we have seen. Fortunately, over the last 25 years, since the great Narasimha Rao, brought reforms to India, I think there have been a lot of benefits. So I think this whole economic gain and the desire to do better is proving to be a binding force. I think with this greater prosperity and economic binding, one other thing that is happening is that there is a greater interest in India's heritage, which could be the next binding force. And you were very kind enough to launch our last film, which I was involved in with Ramji and Deepika ji on history of yoga. And we are making another film to bring about the basis and the foundation of Indian thought and heritage. And it does seem that will be a very, very powerful film, which will make people aware that, what was the science, the thought, and a tremendous amount of evidence, of good results coming out of that heritage, and why Indian heritage has survived, thousands of years and so on. So I think some of this pride will also be a binding force and, act as a mitigant of a lot of the fissiparous and the, fractious approach or fractious strategies of political and other entities that have, made India suffer very, very badly. So I see two things, realistically speaking, that some of our own dharmic teaching and, the greatness of our own individual, the Atma, so to say, weakens our desire to be a part of an aggregate compared to, what may be in other countries. But on the other hand, I see a lot of positive forces. And I think people like you, or, to an extent that, our films and things like that, I have also started another activity. One of my foundations is called Desh Apnaye Foundation, where I'm trying to create a movement that, you are not a democracy unless you are a great citizen. So, how citizenship education has just not been, promulgated in India or, practiced in India. So we've started a movement to, educate children very properly, and it has, got good response so far. So, I believe, and I know that there are several people who are taking steps. So I think there's a good, you should be happy to note that there is a greater enthusiasm in uniting India. These forces are obviously not very noticeable at this point of time, but hopefully, if we continue to do well in the next 5-10 years, our confidence in our heritage will grow. So whatever we can do to grow the confidence in our heritage will be the biggest binding force. And I want to be very objective about it, that just as we want to promote the goodness of our heritage, we must identify the villains in our heritage. That, what forces made us, disintegrate, or what made us weak. We must identify those causes very correctly and take corrective action. If we do not do that, then it will be a fool's world again.